Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us back at Young's Daughters Funeral Home and Bereavement Center. And today I'm really excited to interview a friend. His name is Reverend Eric Peterson, and he is the Associate Pastor at Grace Presbyterian in Temple. And so, Eric, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's a bit chilly out there, but we're going to make this happen.
For sure.
So with liturgy, walk us through that process, and when a family is becoming imminent, or if there is a passing in your congregation, how can one request this, and what is it?
Well, usually we are usually notified by our members after the fact, but there are instances where we do have members who do want to have a pastor with their loved one who is about to pass away. And we do have specific liturgy for that. And it usually has prayers for it to help comfort the bereaved who are with their loved one who is dying, and also the person who is dying. And it's good to just be with them in that time. And usually that's what we do. It's a very simple liturgy. And it's usually a list of different prayers that we do for them.
Wonderful. I know it brings much comfort to know that a church is standing next to them during their transitional hours. And so we definitely appreciate hearing that churches are being in the comfort, meeting people where they are in their homes, and even at hospices or even in the hospital. So I'm glad to hear that. So tell me a little bit about when a loved one has passed, and if it's typical that you get notified after the passing. Walk me through about the arrangement process, and then what the families expect from the church.
Well, normally what happens is usually next of kin calls us. Sometimes we do get word of mouth from different members, and we have to just call them ourselves just to make sure that it is true, and try and work with them as they are working with different funeral homes in the community, and also with making arrangements for when they want to have their, we usually call it service of witness to resurrection, but usually normally call it a memorial service. And try and plan that, and start planning, with the funeral home when they would, if they want a casket, when they would bring that over for the memorial service, and also plan out if they want a bereavement reception at our church, and also as far as what the service will look like at our church. So that's usually how it goes normally, as far as the planning process. And Tom and myself, we usually do prefer to meet with the family members who are involved privately. In person, kind of don't really like doing phone call tag. We usually like to meet with them in person. It's probably the best for us to do that.
I like something that you and I had touched on before. It was talk about the video, and where the church finds it most important or significant, if there was a memorial video that was to be played.
So we usually don't have videos played during the service. We do, of course, have music. We do have our own church musicians who are willing to play if they are available. But we do have the opportunity for family members to play videos that are important to them. If they want a bereavement reception in our fellowship hall, we do have that access for them to do that. But we usually don't have videos played during service. Just after, at the reception, if they want to have one. So
that's great to let the families know, especially for funeral homes, because a lot of times the videos are included as a packaged price thing that is elected to purchase at the funeral homes. And so knowing that ahead of time is very beneficial to the families, because they're always asking, well, where are we going to play it? When is it going to happen? So mostly at the fellowship, in the fellowship hall, at the reception. Is there, are the flowers allowed in the sanctuary or in the chapel?
yes, they are. We usually allow them. So in our sanctuary, we have, of course, we have the chancel at the front. We usually don't have the flowers at the top of the chancel. We usually have it below where the pews are, on the side, because the focus for us is, yes, we're celebrating the life of the one of the family member who had passed, but we're also worshiping God, and that's the focus for us when we do our service. So that's usually how we plan that.
And I like how that leads into the purpose of why a closed casket is mostly ideal for churches. Because of that, we normally we would walk in, we keep it open as for a small visitation beforehand, and then we would go ahead and close. And that's really the purpose of why a closed casket is preferred at the churches. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight about your ceremonies?
Well, as far as our services go, I mean, we have really excellent musicians to help provide some music, and of course, if the bereaved have music requests, we do have discretion with if it is theologically sound. We don't just do favorite rock songs that the bereaved do. There is a point where we have to, okay, that's a great song to play probably at the reception, but we usually try to keep it sacred, and of course contemporary worship songs that the bereaved loved, or the one who passed loved. So we are limited to what we allow for music. So
one thing I didn't ask you was, does your church do its own bulletins or memorial programs?
yes,
Or
we do all that. Usually that has been the question a lot when family members are planning along with us and with other funeral homes, is that we are the ones that do the worship planning and provide the order for worship or bulletins. So
that's another thing that I think it's conflicted sometimes between funeral homes and churches, and clearing the air with interviews like this is so important, because if their family's already purchasing a memorial folder, then we normally get the order of service from the churches and then we create them. But knowing that the churches are electing to make them is super beneficial, so that the families can have one less burden from a purchase, I would say. And what about, because of these because they are going through an emotional hard time, do you have any resources for bereavement classes or services, or how can people look for extra help within your church?
Unfortunately, we don't have classes provided at our church, but Tom, I'm glad that Young's daughter's funeral home does provide those classes for free, and that's great to hear. Usually, the senior pastor Tom and myself, we do, of course, provide pastoral care needs for those who are struggling, with their loved ones passing, and try and work with them. But it's good that there are opportunities at your funeral home to provide those classes and needs for who kind of need that extra help. So that's good.
Well, I'm actually really excited to hear that you do offer pastoral care as a support, because many people don't know or can't relate to grief, and being able to meet people where they are on that journey is so important. And a lot of times, your pastors become your best friends, and
Mhm.
they know more about your family, especially, with your history of being a youth pastor. You can probably seen so much different types of level of loss and transition during COVID, even to be able to have that tool for yourself. And so I definitely commend you for acknowledging that skill set and being able to
Mhm.
provide it to the community. But yes, we will definitely be giving you our bereavement calendar to be distributing to members if they need it. What about graveside services? We touched about, the memorial services or the service of witness to a resurrection. What about a graveside service or committal service if the family chooses? Can you walk us through a little bit about what happens during that time, what to expect?
Usually what happens is, and it just depends on, we usually just follow what the bereaved usually want. As of late, actually, and this might be a trend with just out of the pandemic, is that we usually have done the committal and burial before the memorial service instead of after. That's usually something that's happened a lot more frequently then. But as far as with the graveside committal, I mean, we in our denomination, we do have our own liturgy and worship type service that we do. It's very brief. It involves different words of comfort and meaningful prayers for the committal. And usually it's done before the casket is put under, 6 feet under. It's usually above. And that's usually the you know, lowering the casket is usually done after, when everyone leaves. And we also have different instances where we have liturgy specifically for, if it's not a casket, it's an urn. We do have that provided. So we have different situations. And also if someone doesn't want a traditional service at the church, we can provide a small service at graveside that does involve music, which usually in the past, funeral home or the graveside people provide a boombox. I've had that's happened before. So but there is some flexibility with that.
And what about when a family member elects to have it at the funeral home by itself? Is your staff flexible then to accommodate to go to the funeral homes?
Usually we don't have our musicians go to graveside. If they do want music at their service, we usually have, usually there's a boombox provided if they need music. And also it's usually just Tom or myself that goes to graveside. We don't usually have our other staff go to graveside with us.
And that's good. That's good to know. So if anybody needs to reach out for pastoral emergencies within your church, you have provided so kindly your cell phone number. And so if you have a pastoral emergency, please reach out to Reverend Peterson at 281-723-6062. If you are needing any bereavement resources, you can find them on our website. Those classes are typically free. There might be a low cost book, but typically those can be sponsored if no funds are available. So if you need any or have any other questions that you would like to hear from the church, please put your questions down in the comment section, and we can certainly work with Reverend to get those answered for you. Until then, we want to thank you so much for watching. And Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.